Hey everyone. Hey Tim. Thank you so much for being here with me once again today. I know it's been a very long time since we last connected, so I'm super excited to finally get to connect again. And this time we have a very different topic. We thought we would do something a bit more fun. And so it's got nothing to do with human design, even though we might get a surprise. I don't know.
Maybe.
You never know. But so basically we're going to talk about the elves and about magic maybe in general as well. This is something that's been on our list for a while, and actually something that came up very quickly right after we first connected last year. We realized that we both had a connection, a special connection to the elves, and so it made sense to have this conversation, and we just really felt inspired to dive a bit deeper. And I mean, I have no idea what we're going to talk about today, so it's going to be a surprise for me as well. But I'm really looking forward to sharing some more. So I know I'm going to have a lot to share today, but I think you will too. So I'm just going to start by asking you the first question. I'd really love to know a little bit more about how you first discovered your connection to the elves, and like what really sparked your curiosity, and also like one memory that always comes up for me is when I saw the Lord of the Rings for the first time.
Mhm.
And when I saw the elves and how they were living, and all the waterfalls and the beautiful landscapes and everything, I always felt like immediately that I had been there before, and that I had somehow lived there myself in a past or parallel life. So I was also curious to hear if you had any connection in that way as well. Have you ever felt that same way?
Okay, so those are fun questions. Um, so I'll track back to the beginning of the question, which is, I guess, how that connection revealed itself to begin with. And I feel like a bit of a copycat when I admit that it was Lord of the Rings for me too. Um, and I read the series long before I ever saw the movies. Um, I'm really bad at the game of figuring out at what point in my life that happened. I have no concept for timeline, but I was probably in my early teens, and loved the books. I loved the books. Uh, Instant connection to the elves for a lot of different reasons, but I could feel like if I were to place myself in that world and I were to choose the role that Tim might fill, oh, I would want to be an elf, like I would want to be an elf. And then when they made the movies, I mean, very, very few films do book series justice, but those films did. I mean, they did such a remarkable job. And in particular, the way that they presented the elves, it just lit something up inside of me. Now, I wish I could say that I have like conscious memories of a past life or something like that. I don't. But there are ways in which I think our like inner worlds resonate to something, and like something ignites inside that says ooh, and it feels like familiarity. So I often like to say that I'm familiar with the elves. Whether or not there's a connection there, a real connection, I can't speak to that, but I'd love to think that there is.
I'm sure there is.
Well, something, we are so disconnected from the grander reality of what's possible, that the many lives that we've each probably lived as individual souls and as a collective. So it wouldn't surprise me in the least. um, what I do know is that everything about elves and the world that they inhabit reminds me of something that's very present and possible now. I think that's what excites me about it. It could extend backward and it could extend forward into fantasy, but ultimately what I get excited about when I think about the elves is very much a part of like bringing magic into real life. So I imagine that we'll spend some time talking about that today too. Yeah.
Absolutely. I definitely feel that way. And I've had a long, long journey with the elves, and I don't even really know where to start. But what you just said about the connection to what's happening now in the present world, that's definitely something I've seen as well. And yeah, maybe we can dive into that a little bit more a bit
Yes.
later. I don't know. Do you want me to share anything about how
Yeah,
I
I mean,
first
I would love to hear your story of yeah, connecting to the
Yeah,
elves.
because I kind of feel I need to start there, otherwise everything else isn't going to make
Let's do
sense.
that. Let's lay a foundation. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's kind of similar for me. Also with the movies, I hadn't actually read the books, and I still haven't. But I saw the Lord of the Rings. I mean, many years ago. I was like 22 or something. Like it feels like a lifetime ago. But just immediately, I just felt this connection. I think like to the entire story, it felt like
Yes.
something that had really happened, and I had been there. But especially the elves, when I just saw those scenes, it was just like coming home almost, and it was almost like opening a portal to a different world. Um, there were some times actually when I would just like I felt so drawn to this world that I almost felt like I needed to watch this movie or part of the movies like every single night just to keep that connection open, because it just felt like being in a different dimension almost, and opening that connection, but also definitely like a sense of home, and just I almost like wished I could just like beam myself over and and spend some time with the elves. And so that was the first memory that I have. And then for many years, I didn't really think about it that much more. I just had this fascination, and I felt the connection, and it did feel like something real more than just fantasy. But I think the first more conscious memories, I do have quite a few past life memories. That's just been part of my
Wow.
journey. So back in 2010, 2011, when I had my spiritual awakening, or kind of a second spiritual awakening, I'd already been on this journey for a while, but then I really started getting curious about past life specifically. And initially I was working with angels more, and then I got curious about the elementals and specifically the elves. And so I went into meditation, and then I just asked this question, or I set the intention to learn more about this connection. And then I just got this really clear memory. It was not very long, but I was in the forest, and there were like unicorns and fairies and elves, and we're dancing, and it was just such a magical encounter. And I just knew it was real. And I couldn't even tell if it was necessarily a past life or if it was some kind of parallel reality. Sometimes I have those visions too, where maybe I think it's a past life, but then it's actually more like a future projection or something that's like happening in the parallel reality. But then at some point it actually manifests physically in the now.
Oh,
It's kind of
wow.
hard to explain. And so that those are some of the first memories I have. And now throughout the years, I've done a lot of channeling too. Sometimes I've had like telepathic conversations with elves who are like my spirit guides. And so I've definitely learned a lot from them. And also, they're actually still here on this planet, just in a different dimension. So we
Ah,
can't consciously see them, but
okay. You're going to
um,
have to talk more about that too, I think.
mm,
For me, if not for anyone else.
yeah, I think it's going to be interesting. Even for me, sometimes, when I talk about these things, I get new information too. So it's pretty exciting. But one thing that I've seen, and just to go back to what you mentioned earlier in this conversation about the connection to what's happening on this planet now. Um, so one thing I've seen is the elves actually coexisted with humans for a while. I don't even know exactly how long ago. Sometimes it's kind of hard to see the exact timelines, but it feels like a pretty long time ago. There was definitely a time where there was a peaceful coexistence, and then humans started taking over more of the planet, and there were some conflicts actually between humans and the elves, and so the elves decided to retreat into another dimension to keep their wisdom safe. And so now they still have an important role. They're still, in a place where we can't necessarily see them. Actually, two different things. There are incarnated elves, like you and me, for example.
Yes. Okay. Mm-hmm.
and that's only part of the story, because most of us have had many different incarnations in different realms. So, but some people just have more of the elvish energy than others. I can definitely see it in you.
That's great. Thank you.
And then the elves that are, more in the hidden realms, that are not currently like incarnated in a human body or anything like that, they still have that role as frequency holders and wisdom keepers, but they're very shy about who they share their wisdom with.
Mm-hmm.
So they'll only connect with a few people. Not like,
are they shy or are they selective?
both, a little bit of both.
Yeah. Okay.
I find definitely protective of their wisdom too.
Yeah. Can I ask you a quick question?
Mm-hmm.
I feel like we should maybe define what we're referring to when we talk about elves, because I'm sure everyone has a different image. There's Santa Claus's elves. Then there's the elves like Lord of the Rings. I know there are dark elves and, dark elves. And I mean, tell if you can, tell us a little more about the different types of elves. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, I could definitely say a bit more about that. So I would say Santa's elves are, maybe another type of elves. I don't really connect with those as much. I think I would put those into maybe more the dwarf or gnome kingdom more than the elves. I think it's just another name because I think just historically the word elf has been used to describe so many different things. And but when I talk about elves, I definitely mean the kinds of elves that you see in the Lord of the Rings. I feel that for me, that's like, when I see those elves, that really feels right to me. That's like what I remember. And dark elves, that's an interesting one too. I haven't really spent too much time exploring the darker realms, I have to say.
Me neither.
But
I just know there's a thing.
So the elves are actually kind of like shapeshifters too. Like they're almost like hybrids of many different energies, and they do have that element too. So more of the, I guess, earth wisdom, and I don't even see, darkness as something negative necessarily. I mean, sometimes it can be perceived that way. And I've actually been thinking about that because I've been watching like different series on Netflix about magic, and I just started watching Merlin. I don't know if you.
Oh, nice. Well, check this out. I have a little Merlin candelabra here.
Oh, I love it.
He was my uncle's, and now he's mine.
Cool. I love it. So there's a lot of talk about dark magic there, and I mean, it's all seen as evil, and I mean, that's a lot of that is just colored by our history too, and I mean, there's a lot that we could say about that too, but I would say in general, when I talk about, the dark aspect of magic or elves, I don't necessarily talk about anything evil. It's more just maybe what's hidden, or more like the grounded earth element, and just the deep wisdom that is hidden there. That makes sense.
It does. It reminds me of shamanic arts. It reminds me of shamans. I imagine the pioneers were terrified, by shaman wisdom, and yet it's a connection to earth wisdom. I think that's pretty brilliant the way you described that. Good. And if I can actually add something here, I would, just now I'm connecting some dots here. Before elves was a fascination in Native American culture for me. I mean, from a very young age. I used to have, I guess for 1 year for Halloween as a small child, I dressed up as Squanto. Squanto, the one who helped the original founding fathers or whatever. So I had this like cheap Native American, whatever costume, but I loved it and I wore it all the time, and I wore it for years, even after chubby little Tim started to become even chubbier. And so I wore it until I couldn't squeeze my body into it any longer. And so that's a silly story, but ultimately what I'm trying to demonstrate is I was always fascinated by Native American culture, and specifically about their connection to the earth. You mentioned earlier elementals, the way that we're connected to these earth elements. And I think that there might be inside of me a really powerful point of connection between the elves and what they represent, and the Native American cultures and what they represented in their connection to Mother Earth. So I'm just seeing that now. What do you think of that?
It definitely makes sense to me. What I see in both of these is actually a strong Lemurian connection to, going back to a very old age here on this planet. It's more, I guess, more of that feminine element too. I think maybe the difference that I see energetically between the Native American cultures and the elves, but it's definitely not mutually exclusive. I think the elves have more of this star connection too, and I think the Native Americans have it too. I mean, they do have that wisdom too about other worlds, at least some of them. And I haven't really explored this in as much depth, but just energetically, I feel the elves have a bit more of that star wisdom, and because they actually came here from the stars originally.
Okay. Very interesting. Something that just connected for me now is, have you seen the movie Avatar? Not the TV series, the movie.
I've seen both, actually. Very recently, I watched the movie first, and then I got into the series.
Oh wow! And so obviously all right. So there's Avatar: The Last Airbender. Then there's Avatar with the blue people. That's the one I'm referring to as the movie.
That's a different one.
Yeah. Have you seen that one?
I have.
Okay.
It's been a very long time, but I have seen it.
So that also represents a similar quality,
Yep.
the way they were connected to one another and to their planet. And so I think what I get excited about when I'm talking about the elves is often archetypal in its like value. But what you're talking about, I'm fascinated by, because you're actually speaking to at least potentially like an earth history of the elves, and even beyond, if you're saying they came from the stars. So if you're like on a roll, keep going, because you have I'm spellbound.
It's interesting that you're bringing up the Avatar. I wasn't thinking of that movie, but that there is actually a connection there that I have felt too. I remember like many years ago when I first got started on this journey, I connected with someone. I was still living back in Switzerland back then. I think it was maybe in 2011 or 2012-ish.
Switzerland, you said? Wow. I didn't know you lived there. That's cool.
Yeah, I was born there.
Okay.
I can share a little bit more maybe after the talk, but cool. Anyway, so that was before I came back to Canada, and I connected with somebody there, and she was kind of on a similar journey, and she's in the US now, and I moved to Canada in the meantime. But so we were kind of exploring those past life connections as well, and really fascinated. And I had she's also an elemental soul, so we were both really interested in exploring that connection some more. And so I had a vision of her with a group of, I would say they were elves, but they look different. They look more like star beings, and actually very similar to the Avatar people in the movie. I would just say
Wow.
they're a little bit shorter and they were not that tall, but also like blue skin and just kind of, yeah, similar hair too, I would say. And just remember that smile on her face, just, saying hi. So that's a memory that just comes to mind right now. And
Okay, so that connects to that movie.
mm-hmm.
Okay, so I'm curious to know about something else. Two things. First, you've mentioned elementals a number of times,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't want to assume that anyone has a full understanding of what this terminology means. So can you talk a little bit more about elementals?
I can, for sure. So elemental beings are basically like a group of different beings, and I can explain a little bit more about the connection to the elves too, because there's kind of the elves are a little bit different in that way as well. But elementals are like fairies, dwarves, gnomes, what else?
Like it's like an umbrella category.
Mermaids, like they're connected to the different elements of the earth, like water, air,
Got it.
fire. I guess the dragons you could classify as elementals too, even though maybe some
Cool.
wouldn't. And unicorns, some people would classify the unicorns as elementals as well. I feel that they're part elemental, but they also have an angelic energy too, so I'd say they're more like hybrids. And the elves are hybrids of all the elements, so they have learned to balance the different energies within themselves. And a lot of them also do have the human connection. That would be like the wisdom, like the wizards and the sages, so they have that connection too.
Wow, okay. I love that. Well, even in Lord of the Rings, doesn't Gandalf has a powerful relationship with the elves and a history, and so does Strider, right? Aragorn.
Mm-hmm.
Like deep connections to the elves. And correct me if I'm wrong, I'm trying to remember. I'm actually rereading the whole series every night right now. But I believe that Aragorn might be part elf. I can't remember exactly how that plays out, but basically there's like this way that what you said earlier about the peaceful relationship between these like races, it's played out even in that story, which is another part of what excited me. Like, oh, they're not these like superior elitist beings. It's just that they have learned to exist in a way that humankind is still really struggling to remember. That's how it feels to me anyhow.
Yeah, I think that's very true. And I do remember reading about the connection between Aragorn and the elves. I haven't actually read the books, but I think his mother was an elf, if I remember that correctly. Even though I don't think they say that in the movies, but
right, it's in the lore. I mean, there's a lot of surrounding materials. Cool.
So that's pretty much all I know. But
okay. So I derailed you from the elementals, but at least now we know what that means. And then if there wasn't anything more about that you wanted to say, then I was curious to know about like your archetypal understanding of this. So there's like the history that's obviously fascinated you. I'll bet we could spend an hour just kind of going over how all of those connections are made. But from like an applied perspective, and the elves have meaning to you, but how does that like play itself out in your feet, and like your experience? Can you talk a little bit about that? I'd love to talk about that too.
Okay, that's an interesting question. And I can definitely not just see it from a conceptual point of view. For me, I do have the embodied perspective, because over the years, everything has really merged. Maybe initially I was just more interested in the spiritual aspects of everything. I would just go and explore past lives or parallel lives and maybe talk to my guides. one thing I started seeing was that the realities began to merge. So, what I saw happening in the other realms kind of started becoming part of my present experience here in this world.
Wow.
And I mean, there are many different ways I could talk about this, but if you want to talk about archetypes, I think the closest I could get would be, once again, looking at our own, like, you could call them soul fragments, or again, past incarnations or parallel lives. But there's a correlation between, okay, try not to make this too complicated, but you may have some knowledge about this. I'm pretty sure this won't be entirely new, but let's say if we just look at our present life here as human beings on Earth, we go through different experiences, and sometimes we have maybe traumatic experiences, and the shamans are actually really good at seeing this. Like, they see like the different soul fragments that kind of, split themselves off in a way, or we suppress certain aspects of our personality. So that would be kind of the correlation between this and what you could see when you do like a past life regression, and you bring aspects of yourself back to yourself, basically.
Yeah, okay. Mm-hmm.
And so with the archetypes, I've actually done quite a lot of work around this, which is why it's kind of hard for me to just put this into a few sentences. That was part of what I did in my business in the very beginning, when I was doing like magical business coaching quite a few years ago. I did that kind of work with my clients, where I, look at their soul essence, like what's the essence of what I'm seeing right now, and it's kind of the essence of their personality, and then looking at, maybe what aspects have been suppressed and also want to come back in to, create more wholeness. Of course, we don't need to create it, because ultimately we are already whole, but I think you know what I mean.
Yes.
And so this is how I've worked with the archetypes, and then I get information about what exactly it means to, for example, maybe somebody could be a mermaid soul or have that, in their current incarnation, that could be like the essence of their personality. But maybe there's like a fairy aspect that wants to come in, because maybe they're just being a little bit too serious and
okay, I like that a lot.
just not having enough fun in their lives. Like, I've seen a lot of examples like that, where there's like this childlike energy that wanted to come back in. That's actually quite common. And then we always evolve too, right?
Yes.
So nothing is ever,
Static.
nothing ever stays the same.
Yeah.
But this is pretty much how I see it. So from the perspective of the archetypes. And I mean, I could go into what the different archetypes mean, but for me, it's a very intuitive process when I do those readings. Like, it's never the same for, one person or the other. It's even if they have like maybe the same soul essence in a way, like maybe we have two mermaids, but they might still be very different. So
yeah, okay,
makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. It makes perfect sense. I think that's a really fun way to help a person to like relate to themselves anew. And anytime that we can bring the magical essence into a very like pragmatic conversation, like building a business, there's something about it that reawakens the child in us. And when I say that, I think you'll agree that the child is not representative of naivety. Like, I'm not saying that it's like being, young and dumb. It's like being connected to something greater than what we can see and touch, or something not greater, something else, something beyond the other dimensions, which we forget about as adults. So yeah, it's almost like reawakening the magical eye. It's pretty cool. I love that you did that. And you're still working in this way, I imagine. I mean, my experience of you is that this is like always alive. It's like right at the tip of your tongue.
I do feel it's an important part of my work. And actually, there were times when I wasn't allowing myself to express that, and that's exactly when things were not going well.
Really? Oh, wow.
So I think it's just such an important part of my personality. I'm a Leo North Node too, so that's the child theme. So I think that's just
Great.
part of me that I really need to express in this life, or even
Yes.
evolve into that even more. The element of joy, and I guess that childlike innocence that you mentioned is actually really important when it comes to magic, because children, don't have that filter yet, at least until they get to a certain age and they get taught certain things by certain people. But I mean, we
Yeah.
forget at some point, or we just learn to kind of put things into categories, and okay, this is reality and this is imagination, but the reality is everything is connected. And children still know this, and they have this innate magic where they know they can make a wish, and it's it's real.
Yes.
Or they can have a big dream, and they just know it's real for them, and it's possible. Everything is possible. I still remember that, just looking back about my own childhood. And then we learn to limit ourselves based on what's being expected of us, and what's kind of societally
Acceptable. Yeah.
acceptable. Yes, that's the word I was looking for.
Oh, I helped. Okay,
Thank
good.
you.
Yeah.
And there's actually something that I keep remembering. It's a totally different story, but maybe not, from the Bible. And Jesus said, you have to, okay, the kingdom, what was it? So you have to be like the little ones to access the kingdom. I think it's exactly that.
Yeah, I completely agree.
That magic.
Yes. Yeah, so what's interesting to me about the way that you're using the term magic, and the way that I use it too, is that magic is natural. It seems like magic to those of us who have been alienated from what is natural. And so we do exactly what you've described, and we make ourselves tiny, and we put ourselves into these boxes and categories, and we label ourselves, and reality is significantly more expansive than that, and significantly more dimensioned. So I love using terms like magic, but what I really love is continually stretching the boundaries of my perspective and my awareness to such an extent that what seemed magical a month ago feels like commonplace today. And then again, and then again. And I think that's what probably really what I'm touching when I get excited about the elves, and even Native American wisdom and Avatar. There are these things which seem so far out of the ordinary to the modern human, but they're not. We're out of the ordinary. We're the broken beings in that regard. We're the ones who have turned ourselves off to so many things. And so I think that's worth noting too. It's funny because, may I tell a story? I don't want to monologue.
Oh yeah, go for it.
Okay. Well, growing up, my dad was a magician, like a professional magician. And
What was that?
Well, prestidigitation. And it was all about, he did tricks. He used to do birthday parties. My birthday party. He did a whole magic show for a birthday party. And I think we even have it on like a VHS tape somewhere. And so I grew up around this idea of magic, and then it all stopped when he quit magic and got to work, and I always find that to be that particular experience was very representative of something for me. My dad, the magician, and then it felt like that got turned off, and then he got to work, and so now as an adult, as I begin to revisit this idea of magic, sure, I'm not I'm not doing the same tricks that my dad did. I'm not doing card tricks. It's a different type of magic, but it's almost like reclaiming something that was mine as a child, in a whole new way. And then to bring it all down into the ground of my experience, and to begin to consider that what we consider magic could in fact be truth. That's something really exciting.
Yeah, I love that. And it's such a fun story too, because I think it really illustrates so well what most of us go through. I think even if we don't have parents that are magicians,
Yeah, even if you don't, yeah, that's funny.
we kind of have our part of childhood, and then all of a sudden we have to go to school, and then we have to go to work, and then like things just have to be realistic. And
Yeah, that's
but
right.
at the same time, I think we never really lose it, and we can never really completely lose our magic. And I mean, I think we've probably both been on this journey for quite some time of rediscovering or reclaiming our magic, and really understanding what that means. I mean, in a lot of ways, I guess magic is a broad topic, but I could look at it, from the perspective of the child and see, there's this feeling of magic, and, the playfulness and the fun part of it, and the fairy tales and everything. There's also the real life magic, which, I mean, we've probably both seen
Yeah.
many times in this lifetime. And I really I think I've always kind of had it, looking back, even when I wasn't aware of it, when I was in a place in my life where I really knew what I wanted, and I wasn't compromising on anything, and I just believed that it was possible for me to have that. Sometimes, like often, things would just manifest very, very quickly, and that's the magic for me too. And actually, quite recently, I've seen it too. I've seen myself blocking my magic like in crazy ways, and then taking the steps that I really needed to take to finally, kind of break free from that sense of stagnation. And then, like, all of a sudden, like everything I'd been waiting for just came. Like in the past couple of weeks, it's been crazy. Just like I've just been in big receiving mode. Like every day there was like something big, or almost every day, and it's been so beautiful to see. And I think for me, that's also the magic now, actually,
Yes.
like manifesting something into physical reality. And I know we could probably go on about this one forever.
Oh yeah, that's a great direction. Yeah.
And I'm almost thinking that could be a topic for another conversation.
I think it could be. I think it would be interesting to look at some of these different ideas about manifestation in particular. And I think you and I would have a lot to bring to that based on our experience. I know that it's been primary in my own understanding what that means, really. Uh, We can go back to the elves, though. Is there anything that we're missing on the elves? I have an idea about something, but I want to check in with you first.
Well, I have a lot of notes here, so I don't even know where to start. I think we won't even be able to cover everything in this call. So I think if you have a question or something that you want to add, then please just go ahead and share, and then we can move from there.
Okay. It's less of a question, more of like a rumination. Because in thinking about the elves, I realized that one of the things that really attracts me to them is it's like, if I can understand them as a representative way of being, then that ignites something. And I think that that's really what I noted first when I saw Lord of the Rings. This is a different feeling you get when you view the movie versus reading the book. And Legolas in particular comes to mind. The way that he moved captivated me. You get this sense about all of the elves that they're deeply connected to the earth. I mean, there's a groundedness to them. You can feel the downward pull of that energy. They're connected to the ground. And yet the way that Legolas moves, he's light as air. And so there's this almost feline quality to the way that he's moving. And he can utilize his body in ways that none of the others can. And there's a swiftness and an elegance to everything that he does, which is just indicative of this powerful inner connection to his own being. And then you got, the dwarves, and they're so like, gah, 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 and then the humans are just like lost in their heads. And it's really remarkable to see. But really the word elegance is what comes out of that for me. In fact, it's something that I've learned over time to model myself after, this idea, this concept of an elegant way of being. And so that's what I noted in the elves. It was like, yes, it was their connection to all of the elements. Yes, it was their their clarity of mind and their ability to create, healing tools and weapons that no one else could possibly think of. But at the end of the day, it was something as simple as how they moved that just sent me off and going, and has continued to ever since. I mean, I grew my hair out just so I could feel like an elf. Not exactly, but kinda.
Well, you definitely look like an elf, I would say. You're pretty close.
I'm getting there. Yeah, I just need to learn how to braid my hair, which, by the way, I've tried and I'm no good at.
And make your ears pointy.
Oh yeah, that's another fun story. My one ear, my dad told me a story once about how when I was born, he could tell which of the babies was me because I had this little pointy crook in my ear. So I've always thought I have at least one elf ear.
I love that. And it's so funny that you mentioned, the flexibility and the elegance of the elves and how they move. I wasn't even thinking about that, but Legolas, I think, is a good example. And there's another series I was watching on Netflix the other week, or maybe for a couple of weeks. I was just binge watching, so I was done with it.
Nice.
After I watched the Avatar, The Last Airbender, I found another one that's from the same producer, and I think it's called The Dragon Prince or something. And there are elves in that one too. And those elves are exactly like that. Like they just jump from like one tree to the next, and like really fast and flexible. And I really loved that too. Like I'd love to be able to do that. And
Yeah.
actually, I do remember now there was like a past life memory or parallel life memory I had like many years ago that was kind of like that too. I was walking in the forest and just feeling so much lighter in my body, like there was some kind of magic that happened. I was connecting with it, with that energy of the elves, and it was like I was running, but I wasn't exhausted. I didn't get tired, and I just had that energy. Maybe from that connection, or maybe from nature. I don't know exactly what it was, but it just felt like totally different feeling than maybe running on concrete or
Yes.
or when you're just running a marathon just for the sake of running a marathon. It's just really I guess connected to my surroundings and connected to that energy, and that's exactly what it felt like. Just this very light feeling, and just running, skipping and running in the forest, and just
Beautiful.
not feeling tired. And I think maybe as I think back now, I think I got a vision of even like climbing the trees and that as well. So
That's meaningful. And honestly, I believe it is. And I actually believe that embodying that way of being, that movement, is something that we can actively cultivate. It's something that I've been exploring for a long time. I mean, it's funny that we're blending so many things in this conversation. Even Avatar: The Last Airbender, that series is one of the best demonstrations of martial arts that I've ever seen, and it's a silly cartoon. So I've been training martial arts for a long time, and a lot of that, especially with soft form martial arts, some of these more advanced methods, they're all about developing this awareness of where the energy is in the body, and whether it's very low and whether it's very high. And my uncle, the one who gave me the Merlin, he's passed now, but which is why I got Merlin. But he always used to talk about how the Native Americans would walk, and he taught me how to walk like they did, in a way that was soft on the earth. And he taught me how to track no, not really, I'm not a tracker, but he taught me things like that, which have always stuck with me. And so every one of us can explore this. There's a playfulness to exploring it too. And it doesn't actually matter if you're in a forest or on your way to the grocery store. We get to feel ourselves in the body and to begin to apply a certain amount of awareness to how we interact with the ground. Something as simple as that changes things. It changes your relationship to the body, and it changes your body's relationship to the environment. And that alone is an enormous step toward the very things that I think we're getting excited about in this conversation today.
Totally. And I can definitely expand on this one too, because one thing I've seen too, when I was kind of looking at some Elvish memories, and I think that's more than just my own personal memories. It's more like tuning into the collective memories. But one thing I saw when I was like telepathically communicating with the elves, they showed me how they used to, they were so connected to nature, there was no separation really. So they would build homes by just connecting with the trees, and the trees would grow in certain ways. You can actually
Wow.
see that in Lord of the Rings too, when you look at Lothlorien, the
Yeah.
maybe Rivendell not as much, but you see all those huge trees and how they're like shaped in different ways, and the elves have their homes in the trees. And that's
Super cool.
very similar to what I saw, and it's like a merging of nature and technology even. We can't really imagine it right now, but I have a feeling that we're kind of heading back there, or we are going to kind of get that wisdom back and be able to do that again, but in a way that's not invasive, or it's not going to hurt the environment. There's just no separation at all. And so it's very interesting to see what can happen when we can embody that awareness or that consciousness.
Beautiful. I don't know if that's where we're heading. I do know that it is where we need to head. And it's the difference between relationship and utility. And of course, this is another conversation all its own too, but I love that you pointed at it, because I think it's extremely relevant for our times. I mean, there are things that are unfolding right now that will be made or broken by this very subject. If we continue to treat the earth as a utility, well, eventually the earth is going to sneeze and there will be no more humans. Like it'll be just like that. Or we can remember the relational quality of connection that is natural and inherent to us. And what you described about the elves shouldn't be too far off. It shouldn't be that great of a reach. I think it should be natural.
I think in some ways it's already happening, maybe just in a different way. But I've actually been exploring those new technologies too, and there's so many people who do amazing things in this world. Sometimes you can, I think, get a really negative image too when you look at certain kinds of media, but there's also a lot of positive things that are already happening, and people like getting really creative and
oh yeah
planting trees on rooftops and things like that.
I'm actually very much enjoying seeing that creativity play out in new brands in all different areas. Everything, actually recently I found like a toothpaste company that is dedicated to disposing, like getting rid of this whole like disposable toothpaste tube trash. And so they go about designing a product for something so basic that addresses that. So, and there's a lot of brands doing this in just about every dimension of our experience. So I agree with you. There are things happening, but we have to remember to look for them.
Absolutely. But I just try to really do that. And I even have a Facebook page where I collect articles and resources just around that topic. I've been doing that since 2012.
Wow.
I don't run it very actively, but whenever I see something, I share it there. It's been so fascinating to see, because what we do, what we look for, we do find. And I think it's so beautiful to, it's important to know what's going on too, and be aware of the problems that we have on this planet, for sure. But I think it's also really beautiful to look for the solutions that are already there, because I think a lot of people just, feel really powerless maybe, or they think we're doomed anyway.
Yeah.
And so there's nothing we can do. But when we look at the solutions that are already available, like there's so much that's already possible now, and that has been possible for many, many years. And I think a lot of it is just kind of having access through seeing it, and then the mindset around implementing it too, which I think is, it's another long topic that, that we could probably talk about for an hour. But
Oh yeah, easily. I will say that I feel optimistic. In the face of everything, I do feel optimistic, because all it's going to take is creativity and care. It's very basic ingredients required to completely alter the way that we experience the world. So it's at the very least possible. It is certainly doable. It's just going to take some time and awareness. Okay, I have something else I want to share.
Okay.
Well, actually, it's not something I want to share. It's something I want to beg you to share, because I don't know where we're at on timing exactly, but I feel really excited for you to talk about what you've created recently, especially now that we're talking about brands and like original creations. So you know what I'm referring to, right?
Yes.
Okay.
I know exactly. And I think this is the perfect time, because
Oh, great. Okay.
was just going to say, I think it'll be time to slowly end this conversation. But yeah, I have been very, very creative this year so far.
Okay.
And so I guess a lot of our viewers don't really even know much about my work. I've been on a crazy journey this past year, and I can't even share everything right now. But it's been a kind of a journey back to creativity, and I've been mostly designing oracle card decks for my clients this past year. But I had created some of my own in the past, and just this in January this year, all of a sudden I had this idea, this download. I wanted to create my own deck in a totally new way, because in the past I had created more of those like text-based cards.
Okay. Yes.
You've seen those before.
I have. I've totally seen that one. Yep.
So I wanted to create something different with artwork, because I've really been upgrading my skills and everything for the work that I've done for my clients. So actually,
You're creating your own artwork. Are you designing and things like that too?
Yeah, I created some of my own artwork, and
Wow.
some of it is not mine, but I have different techniques that I've been experimenting with, like especially photo manipulation. I'm just going to show you the cover. I just got this.
Fine Magic. Oh, wow.
Mail.
I love the fonts too.
I haven't shared it yet. But...
Yeah, I haven't seen this yet. That's gorgeous.
And so I can just show some of the cards. I just got this in the mail this past Friday. And I think by the time this video is live, I might have them on my website. And by the way, I have a new website also for everyone.
Oh, wow.
I'm expanding. I think you already know this, but so I will leave the link down below. And other than that, you can find it under wonderlandpublishing.net. So that's just for this kind of work. I felt like I needed to create a new platform. Just a few examples. Well, you've seen this one before.
Yeah. Where did I see that one before?
I think I sent it to you in a message.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Because it did look familiar. So flip through a few more. I'd love, if you don't mind, I'd love to see a few more.
Okay. I really like this one.
Oh, me too. It's got a book in it.
Yeah, that makes sense. Or something like this.
Oh yeah. I love those.
And then, okay, there are a few that are not my own artwork. This is a combination of my own artwork and resources that I found online.
Forest.
Ha, of course, I had to show this one today.
Yes.
You're seeing the connection till just now. And
wow.
Which one?
These are great. I really like the way they feel. How does it feel for you when you open them the first time? Was it a total win? Waterfall, gorgeous.
It was a very interesting feeling. I actually panicked a little bit at first.
Oh no.
It just happens sometimes when you're taking a big step or a big leap forward. I definitely had a bit of resistance around embracing this new step and fully embracing this new gift. But I mean, I was super excited when I got them printed, and it definitely it feels like a big step forward and just something new that I've really felt inspired to share with the world. And I really love how they turned out, though.
Good.
Like really nice. I like the quality of the prints, and here's the back.
It looks very rich. I mean, it looks really beautiful. Well done.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed this process, and I definitely feel it was time to create my own new deck for a change after so many decks that I've created for my clients. And so I definitely have a big vision for this moving forward. And I know it's going to take some time, one step at a time, but yeah, I think that's pretty much everything that I wanted to share. Is there anything that you wanted to share before we close this conversation? Anything that you've been working on, or any last thoughts that you wanted to share?
Well, I'm working on a lot of things. I haven't posted even a single Facebook message for months. I've been real quiet, but that's changing. So all I'll say for now is anyone who's been paying attention to me, thank you. I'm still here. And I'll be back very soon. And then for you, Anna, I just want to thank you for these conversations. I mean, this was fun. And I was thinking as you're showing off your deck, like, oh man, how smart would we have been to have planned this conversation around that? But we didn't. We were just excited to talk about elves. And now here you have this this beautiful, perfectly relevant gift just waiting to be revealed. I think that's pure brilliance. So thank you for this, and thank you to everyone listening. This has been a fun talk.
Yeah, it's been fun to do something a little bit different. And I did see the connection. I felt that it was a really, I mean, no coincidence really, but it was good timing to have this conversation now that I'm ready to share those cards. And I know we'll probably have a lot more to share again soon. And we already have some topics planned too, or kind of planned. So that'll be fun as well. And I just wanted to say thank you as well, once again, for being here with me today and for being open to talking about something a little bit different. It was a bit of a leap for me as well.
It was fun, Anna. My
pleasure. These are all things that I haven't shared before in this way, or haven't shared in a very long time. So it's kind of nice to reintegrate that part of my story and my work too. So thank you for also being part of holding space for that.
Oh, my pleasure. Totally. Yeah.
And yeah, I think that's it for today. So I just wanted to say thank you, everybody, for being here with us today as well, and for watching and listening. And as always, feel free to leave comments down below. We always love hearing your feedback and also any questions that you may have. Who knows, we might do another one about magic and magical things sometime in the future. And I think that's what we've got for you today. So thanks, everyone, and we'll hopefully talk to you again soon.